there's a ton of buzz surrounding the University of Miami Hurricanes in 2024, and rightfully so. Head coach Mario Cristabol and his staff have recruited a ton of players to come in and mix with an already great returning cast. But the number one guy that they're bringing in came all the way across country from Eastern Washington, and he wears jersey number 1. Quarterback Cam Ward. I've talked about him in an earlier show where I called him the best quarterback in college football. I stand by that now, and I think if things work out the way they should this year, that he's going to be that at the end of the season as well. And the key to the 2024 Canes season and Cam Ward leading them to the elite level as a football team rests on one question. Will head coach Mario Cristobal get out of the way, take the handcuffs off of his offense, and let Cam Ward do his thing? This is QB Unfiltered, my take, Cam Ward, and the University of Miami Hurricane football team.
I don't ever slow up, no I don't take shit. I got no love for the fakeness. If you want to play tough and want to hate this, I'll always show up and make a statement.
Okay, so in a nutshell, Cam Ward is a difference maker, and he's special. The entire college career for Cam Ward, he has played in the air raid system, and that's going to be the topic of today's discussion. From the time he started playing at Incarnate Word to Washington State University and now to the U, it's been air raid, air raid, air raid with a question mark now that he's in Coral Gables. Okay, just a real brief history breakdown on Cam Ward and his college career leading us up to this year. He started out at Incarnate Word, and I've got to read this, guys. I still can't believe I have to say this, or the NCAA came up with this moniker, but here we go. Incarnate Word is an NCAA Division I football championship subdivision. And as I've said in other shows, yeah, we used to call that 1AA. All right. Anyway, when he was a freshman, he won the award given to the top freshman football player in the country at that division. And during his 2 years there, he really lit things up. And he played for head coach Eric Morris. And we're going to talk about the Mike Leach, Hal Mumme coaching tree today as part of this show. But Eric Morris, the head coach who also served as the offensive coordinator, he was a starting slot receiver for Mike Leach at Texas Tech when they were lighting people up in the Big 12. He later went on to coach for Leach at Texas Tech and then was the head guy at Incarnate Word. And Cam Ward was slinging it for him and just destroying defenses. So as a sophomore, Ward was named the Offensive Player of the Year and really put up phenomenal numbers. I mean, he threw for a little over 4,600 yards and 47 touchdown passes, which is really a phenomenal year. And after that season, he transferred to Washington State in the Pac-12, where again, he's playing in an air raid system. And he had a pretty damn good year last year, his only year at Wazoo, where he threw for over 3,200 yards and 23 touchdowns. It was also pretty obvious for anybody that watched him play last year at Wazoo that this guy was an elite talent. And you only have to watch a couple of clips of him playing to know that he has tremendous skill. He's got one of the quickest releases I've seen. He's extremely accurate. He makes really, really good decisions, and that's one of the characteristics that your quarterback has to have to run the air raid. Great decisions and accurate. So we'll talk about those characteristics here in a little bit. But Incarnate Word, Washington State, then he hit the portal and came out to the University of Miami. Now, I don't know exactly what head coach Mario Cristobal said in his conversations recruiting Cam Ward, but I would imagine the term air raid was right up at top of what he said, what he laid out for Cam that was going to be waiting for him when he came to the U, that they weren't going to do anything different, that he hasn't done his first 3 years plan. And I would imagine that was used quite a lot in the recruiting conversation. So Cristobal really took a step in this air raid direction by hiring offensive coordinator Shannon Dawson 2 years ago. So Dawson's first season at the U was this past year in 2023. And let's talk about Shannon Dawson, because he's been associated with some of the most iconic air raid gurus in college football. Dawson comes to the U after coaching at the University of Houston. While he was at Houston, he was the OC for head coach Dana Holgorsen. All right, now, real quickly, Dana Holgerson's bio. Holgorsen played at Iowa Wesleyan, which is in Mount Pleasant, Iowa, real small school, but that's the first college coaching job for two dudes named Hal Mumme and Mike Leach. And Holgorsen was a receiver, starting receiver for those guys, playing in the air raid for the two guys that are credited with developing the air raid. So then when he was done playing, Holgorsen moved to Valdosta State when Leach and Mumme moved to Valdosta State to coach, and Holgorsen coached with them. He then went to Texas Tech with Mike Leach when Leach got the head job for the Red Raiders, and eventually ended up as the head coach at West Virginia, where he hired Dawson to come in and be his offensive coordinator. Now, Dawson has also coached for Mumme when he was at New Mexico State and Southeast Louisiana. So Shannon Dawson knows what the hell he's doing with the air raid. He knows the ins and outs of the system. He knows how to set up the install and how to practice it. And if you listen to any air raid guy from the top down, they're not going to talk about it's the plays that make the air raid. They're going to talk about how it's practiced and how it's installed and practiced on a weekly basis all through the season. That's what makes the air raid so effective. Well, Dawson knows all this stuff because he's gone through it in various coaching jobs where he's done the install. He knows the rhythm and the tempo of practice setup, the drills, the team period, all that stuff, the sequencing of it, all of that. And then you've got the game day play calling abilities, okay? And then what's really important about game day, which a lot of people overlook, is the ability of coaches to make adjustments in real time. Because I guarantee you this, you're going to run into a lot of games throughout the course of a season where the defense comes out and plays something that you have not prepared for that week in practice. A new little wrinkle, a new little look, whatever. You haven't worked on it, and you've got to be able to, number one, diagnose it right now, and number two, make the corrections with your players on the field right now. And it can't be one of these things where you go an entire game getting your ass kicked because they're doing something different, and then on Monday or Sunday or Saturday night after the game, your coaches go, shit. They were doing this to us. If we only would have adjusted this way. Too late. So that's the kind of stuff that Dawson brings with him to the University of Miami. Now, let's take a look at head coach Mario Cristabol. Cristobal played offensive line for the Canes. He was a starter. He was a damn good offensive lineman. He played on 2 national championship teams for the U. He won one for head coach Jimmy Johnson, and he won one for head coach Dennis Erickson. He's been a head coach at 3 different spots, including Miami. So he started out at Florida Atlantic from 2007 to 2012. He then bounced around with some assistance jobs before he was hired as the head coach at the University of Oregon, and he was there from 2018 through 2021, and he's been the head coach at the University of Miami since 2022. Now, a lot of people say that Cristobal is one of the best recruiters in college football, all right? But he also has a lot of consistent criticism that comes along with his coaching style. And let's talk about that real quick. Too conservative on offense. Too much reliance in establishing the run game. All right. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that here in a second. Micromanaging his offensive coordinators, and he's stubborn. All right. Now, that's why I said the number one question this year for Miami is Mario Cristobal going to step aside and let Dawson run the offense the way he wants to run it, and let his best offensive player, the guy wearing jersey number 1, win games for you, which means putting the ball in his hand, not handing it off. Now, last season, Dawson's first in Coral Gables, they really pulled off something that's hard to do. They were like 4 plays away from being exactly 50-50 run pass. Okay? 50-50 run pass, which means they threw the ball the same amount of times as they ran the ball. 50-50. That's not the way the air raid works. All right? In order for the air raid to be humming, it needs to be like 70-30, maybe even higher than that. 75-25. All right? Now, believe it or not, if you've got a great offense, now listen, there are exceptions to this all over the place. You know, one exception that I could throw out right now is what Ole Miss does with Lane Kiffin, where those guys are pretty damn good throwing it and running it. That doesn't usually happen. So the really good offenses, if they're going to throw the ball, that's what they put their money on. And they do like a supporting cast with the run game, make it as best they can, but their effort and energy is in that passing game. Flip that. If you're a running team, all your energy and work goes into that run game, and you do just enough with the passing game to keep people honest. Now, an example of that would be Barry Switzer and the Oklahoma Sooners. Now, I go back a lot of years to use that example, but when Switzer was running the wishbone with Oklahoma, they would run for like 500 or 600 yards a game, and they would throw 1 pass. And they ran like 4 different plays, and 3.5 of them were run plays. All right. So they put their practice time into working that triple option so that they had it down to a freaking science. And the triple option is just like the air raid in the fact that the air raid, you're throwing the ball forward. The triple option, you're pitching it backwards. But in both cases, you're putting the defense in a bind where your quarterback's reading a conflict player and making his decision on what he's doing based on what that defensive guy does. All right. So that's a show for another time. Anyway, the fact that Miami was 50-50 last year is telling me that Cristobal is doing what most, not all, what most former offensive linemen who are now head coaches do. And that is looking at Dawson or getting on the headset with Dawson if he's up in the box and saying, we got to run the ball. We got to run the ball. We got to run the ball. That is the offensive line mentality. I've worked for a former offensive lineman as a head coach. I've been around a whole bunch of offensive line coaches that coached for me, and they all basically think the same way. Now, I want you to think about this. When you're pass blocking as an offensive lineman, in their mind, that is perceived as a defensive way to play football. Okay? They're retreating and they're trying to block a guy that is the aggressor and the attacker. Whereas when you run the ball, the offensive lineman is the guy now that's setting the pace, and he's attacking the defensive linemen and the linebackers. And that's the way they think. Okay? And so it takes a lot for a former offensive lineman now who's a head coach to turn his offense over to a guy that doesn't put as much emphasis on the run game as that head coach wants to, or what that head coach has in his inner workings. All right. When I was hired in 1989 to go out to the Midwest, Nebraska, NCAA Division II school, I heard this from a ton of high school coaches out there that we played offensively at Wayne State. We played sissy football because we threw the ball. We played sissy football until it became a situation where we were routinely scoring 40 and 50 points a game. And then that talk just kind of fizzled, right? So, but that's the way people think. Now, the success of the air raid the last, 25 years or so has really changed people's opinion on offensive football. But the air raid has to be the majority of your practice reps on the passing game, and then really make that running game simple but effective. Now, here's the thing that most guys just don't get. The air raid and spreading people out makes your running game more effective and easier for your offensive linemen. Why? If you took an offensive formation and you came in and ran double tight wishbone, so you've got 11 offensive guys within a 5-yard area. Defensively, you're going to have 11 defensive guys in a 5-yard area. And in the olden days, back when they had leather helmets and no face masks, that's what they did. And then it was just hand the ball off up the middle, try to gain a couple of inches at a time, whatever. All right. Now, you take two of those guys out of the backfield and you put them out wide. That takes two guys out defensively. And then you take those two tight ends and you put them in the slot. That takes two more guys out. All right. And now you better have safeties back behind those defensive guys that had to go out with the receivers, because if you got receivers that can run and you're playing like a cover zero look, you're really rolling the dice as to whether or not you're giving up huge chunk plays on verticals. So now you put safeties back there, and pretty soon that 11-man defensive scrum turns into a 5-man box. And what most defensive coordinators do against the air raid and against teams that run 4 wide, 1 back is they run a 5-man box. 4 down guys, 1 inside linebacker, or 3 down guys, 2 inside linebackers. And when you've got 5 guys in the box and you've got 5 offensive linemen blocking, and you run inside zone where you're doubling guys now and you're leaving that end guy unblocked, and that's who the quarterback's reading for give or keep, you really put your offense in an advantageous situation for the run game and you make it more effective. So think about this, the screen game. And we talked about screens earlier. When you throw the screen game, that's just an extension of your run game. All right. So you flip the ball out on the perimeter, just like reverse pivoting and pitching it to your tailback, or coming down the line on triple option and flipping it to your tailback. Now I'm passing it out there, hand grenading it out there, and I'm letting my receivers now catch the ball on the perimeter and go. It's just an extension of the run game. Okay, and then remember this. Alabama was good when Saban first got there. You know, for a handful of years, whatever, they were good. But Alabama did not become Alabama until Nick Saban let his offensive coordinators do their thing. Now, think back to him and Lane Kiffin, and him continually on Lane's ass during games. And I think at some point in time, he had an epiphany that, you know, maybe I should just let this guy who I hired to run my offense do his thing. And they took off offensively. They were always great on defense. But when Saban got out of the way, they took off offensively and they really became a juggernaut, you know, as the Bama, Bama. So that's what Cristabol's got to do this year with Cam Ward and his offense and his offensive coordinator. Mario Cristabol needs to manage the game from a head coaching point of view, handle the timeouts, talk to the officials, so on and so forth. Let his defensive coordinators and offensive coordinator do their thing. All right. Let Cam Ward, their best offensive player, shine. Okay, so Cam Ward's success in 2024 is going to be Miami's success as well. As Cam Ward goes, the Hurricanes go. Now, they're going to win games regardless of what they do with him, but they're going to be an elite program if they let him do his thing. Okay, this should be interesting and fun to watch, and I'm going to leave you with this. If Cam Ward's sitting in the front row of the Heisman Trophy ceremony in New York City in December, then the U has probably had a great year. And if Mario Cristobal turns Cam Ward loose this year, then we will see him at the Heisman ceremony. Okay, if you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe to the channel. That like button really helps me out. Keep subscribing. I really appreciate it, guys. And this is QB Unfiltered. And remember, always throw the ball short to guys who can score. See ya.
I got no love for the fakeness. If you wanna play tough and wanna hate this, I'll always show up.